Hey, Reed, 52 episodes. Who's been on? Susie Bowie, Will Armstead, Jeanette Gindling, Sean Sackman, Stephen Solomon, Brian Deming, Rob Lane, Chris Rich, Charlie Murphy, Kathy Layton, Cheryl Taylor, Amy Alexander, Jessica Muroff, Deborah Jacobs, Ashley Dietz, Dennis Murphy, David Fink, Cliff Walters, Amanda Smith, Teresa Grimison, Hardy Smith, Roxy Jurdy, Larry Clark, and Mike Oxman, Lauren Diorio, Matt George, William Kennedy, Patton McDowell, Adrian Bookhammer. Happy birthday to the I-501CU, the podcast for nonprofit board members. Yes, this is our 52nd episode, 52 consecutive weeks of doing this podcast to help support nonprofit board members and actually executive directors and CEOs as well. I'm Michael Corley, and as I stated, this is a happy birthday to us. And, when Reed and I launched this podcast a year ago, we forced ourselves. We said we were going to do this for a year just to see if we get any traction. And I tell you what, we've had a heck of a time. And I've had so many wonderful guests on this. And as you're going to hear, if you haven't heard already, the number of guests that we've had, it's really been a treat to me to interview so many of those folks and to get to know some new people. So in this episode, I'm going to just reflect on a few things over the past year and try to put it a little bit into context of what I'm seeing as I'm working with nonprofit boards in my consulting practice. And so I could talk about every episode we had because our guests have been absolutely phenomenal. And I hope you've enjoyed them as well as I. But as I think of three themes, particularly as it relates to what's happening today in my consulting practice, is there are, number one, over the past year, I've been affirmed how important serving on a board of directors is, and how it is without a doubt the best leadership development experience for a board member, for an individual, be it from the business world, not the business world, but serving on the board, the depth and breadth of issues, leadership issues that you experience throughout the month, certainly at board meetings, is second to none. I cannot think of another type of training, real-time training, where you have to make real leadership decisions is available to any of us who just want to participate. We just want to be on a board of directors. And if you go back to episode 7, I talk a little bit about this. I identify the 7 aspects of being on a nonprofit board, why it's the best leadership development experience available. And I firmly believe this, and that was episode 7. So that would have been 46, 47, 45 episodes ago. And I still believe it. Serving on a nonprofit board is the best leadership development experience ever. And, Kathy Layton talked a little bit about that. You have to be a contributor and not a placeholder as a board member. Episode 16, that really sticks out, Kathy saying that. And I have seen it over the past year. I work with board members that are clearly contributors. And then, unfortunately, those that are just placeholders. And boy, that's so frustrating to the other board members and to the CEO and executive director. I encourage you, if you're going to do it right, go all in, grow and develop professionally, and be a contributor and not a placeholder. All right, so this is a little bit closer to home as I'm working with a number of clients on this, and that's the importance of bylaws, the governing documents of the organization, the articles of the incorporation. You start with the articles of incorporation. Going back to Cliff Walters in episode 32, he says that is a Declaration of Independence. The Constitution are your bylaws, whatever the grammatically correct term is. So think about that. The articles, really your declaration. This is what we are. How are you going to be governed? The bylaws. And the bylaws should be written to give you flexibility, but also put those guardrails in place. And it's really, really important that you understand any wording in those bylaws because there are ramifications and repercussions related to those. So encourage you to get either support from an attorney or somebody with experience in governance. Doesn't always have to be an attorney. There are a lot of nonprofit board members that have experience of bylaws that really well-constructed, well-written bylaws, understood by the board, make governing the organization much easier. And I would also encourage you, make sure you check those at least once a year, maybe once every other year to really review those. And they're allowing you to govern like you need to be governed. I often say it's not this generation you worry about, it's that next generation. So as you're thinking about succession planning, you're thinking about future board members, you want to have your bylaws in place so that there's no questions on how the organization is run or should be run by future board members. Here's another one that's near and dear. So this is number 3. that's near and dear right now and the number of clients I'm working with, and that's the relationship between the board chair and the CEO. That relationship, the succession, the change, the ongoing challenges between those two roles. We talk about it in episode 34 when we had Amanda Smith and Teresa Grimison, both the Community Foundation of Brevard. Theirs is a really good relationship, and they work very well together. And so they complement each other. And that allows Teresa, the CEO, to do what she needs to do and knows that she has support from the board, and she doesn't have to worry about a lot of the board issues that so many CEOs do because she's got a chair that is managing the board. And that's the chair's role, to manage the board. Lauren Diorio in episode 43 touched on this a little bit. I had an opportunity to go up into her neck of the woods and talk about board governance and the relationship between the chair and the CEO and why that's so critically important. And some of the things that a chair needs to do, it needs to ensure is done to help the CEO and vice versa. So it's really a two-way relationship. And I would argue that is the most important relationship in a nonprofit that can make or break the organization, certainly for a year or two as those folks are in those roles. So as I think back in the first year, I could go on and on. I could talk for quite some time about this. It has been an absolute pleasure. It's been a pleasure working with my son, who's behind the scenes producing all this and tells me all the time, hey, you got to find a guest. You got to do this. And so we pull those out. It's been an absolute treat, as I said, with the people I've had an opportunity to interview. And we're grappling. I shouldn't say we're grappling. We're thinking about what's the next year going to hold. Are we going to keep doing this? Probably so. But what are we going to do? Are we going to change topics? Is it still going to be about board governance? Are we going to dovetail in some other things? Well, I guess that remains to be seen, but we're excited to move forward and excited to celebrate this 52nd episode of the I-501CU, the podcast for nonprofit board members. And I'll add with this, or sign off with this, those of you who are serving on nonprofit boards to make our communities better, thank you.